What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I want to give a shout out to a couple of subscribers for showing love. Much respect to the man, the myth, the legend, the brother Robert Mason coming through, showing love for donation once again to Too Raw for TV via the PayPal. Salute to you, longtime Golden State Warriors fan. Also want to give a shout out to a longtime subscriber and frequent contributor and donator to this channel, the brother Aram, with the $10 donation via the PayPal. Much respect to you for showing love as well. So I had a couple of people ask me this question, and they said, who do I think is going to win in November? Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? And I have to be honest with you, I think anybody that gives you a definitive answer with these two is being disingenuous at this point. It's way too early. Now, I know with Biden, I said I was fairly certain that Trump was going to win. Because to me, Biden would have been the weakest incumbent running for re-election since Herbert Hoover in 1932. Even weaker than Jimmy Carter. Now Jimmy Carter wound up losing in a massive electoral landslide, absolutely. But the country was less polarized than it is today. And even if you look at Reagan's landslide in 1980, there were weaknesses. Of the 44 states Reagan carried, 20 were only by pluralities, now outright majorities. John Anderson, who ran on the independent ticket, took way more votes from Carter than he did Reagan. Anderson cost Carter a few states, including New York. And even in the South, a lot of those states were very, very close. South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky. All these states were really, really close. So if you look at the states that Reagan carried by, I think, 3 percentage points or less, and you flip them to Carter, even with the momentum going away from Carter, Carter still could have gotten at least, I think, something around 160, 170 electoral votes. And that's after the "Are you better off than you were 4 years ago" debate moment for Reagan, which really swung the momentum his way the last week of that campaign. Matter of fact, the last weekend going into Election Day. But Carter, at least at one point in the election, had a shot. Biden had no shot. And as polarized as we were and are, Biden could have lost really, really badly. Okay, really, really badly. Now, the deck is reshuffling with Kamala. I'm still not convinced that this momentum they keep talking about is real. And I just saw an event in Pennsylvania where Kamala, who the media with their steroids are turning her into a heavyweight, supposedly this juggernaut only had 68 supporters show up at a convention, at an event. I don't know about that, man. You know what I'm saying? I'm not convinced this is real. Let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that this is real. Now, this is just something I think could possibly happen. This is just an educated guess. Don't take this seriously. Okay, this is just a scenario. This is an overgeneralization. I suspect that Kamala will do better than Joe Biden with Black voters and Latino voters. I suspect she's going to do better with those voters. And I suspect she's going to do a lot better, than Biden when it comes to younger voters. So, Arizona, Georgia. Now, this is an old map, because some people might be like, well, why are you using blue for Republicans and red for Democrats? Well, when I was growing up, until 2000, that was the color scheme. Like back in those days, the Republicans were identified with blue and Democrats with red. But you know why they changed the color scheme like that? because Democrats were running away from not just being called liberals, but they didn't like the affiliation with communism. You know what I'm saying? So starting in 2000, you started seeing the term blue states and red states. The color schemes, for the most part, on most national uh, election night maps, they changed, they switched. Now all of a sudden, you start seeing red for the Republicans and blue for the Democrats. That's when it really started. But I'm using the old school. So the red are the Democrats and the blue are the Republicans. Now, it's a possibility. I'm not convinced of this. But there's a possibility that they think they could flip, the Democrats, that they could flip North Carolina, well, Democratic. I'll just say Democratic. So on this map, there would be red. Okay. So I think she'll be stronger in states where there is a more significant minority population. I think she'll be weaker, by contrast, in states that are a part of the quote unquote Bible Belt or the Rust Belt region. States that Biden were able to flip blue in 2020, Pennsylvania, um, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. I have a suspicion that many voters are going to be lying to pollsters saying they're going to support her, and they wind up voting for Trump, a third party. And I think in those areas, that's going to hurt Kamala, and Trump may be able to flip those states back. I suspect, though, she may pick the governor of Pennsylvania as her running mate. Either that or Senator Kelly. And still got Josh Shapiro, who I'm trying to look now what his approval ratings are in Pennsylvania. Check something out here. All right, so yeah, so Josh Shapiro is very popular in Pennsylvania. His approval rating is somewhere around 60%. So he's a very popular governor in Pennsylvania. So he may, if he is the VP, he probably will be able to pull enough voters over to the ticket to swing that state to Harris. That's why I tend to lean that state toward her for right now. But I don't know about this area right here, man. I don't know about this area right here. I might be wrong, and maybe Minnesota stays Democratic, and that's the case, then she wins. But in this scenario right here, if Trump is able to flip these three states to the to the Republican Party, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. If she's able to flip these three states away from the Biden column, then that pushes him to 270, which would be right at the minimum. That's the minimum for election, right? 270, 268. But this is the thing. Why do I have a suspicion that if that happens, the Democrats will probably try to, or one of those electors isn't going to vote for Trump. They're not going to vote for him in December because the Electoral College meets after the election. I would have a sinking suspicion that one of those electors, or maybe more, is going to switch their vote from Trump. I don't think they'll have the balls to switch their vote from Trump to Kamala. I don't think they'll have the balls to do that. But what they could do is just not vote for Trump, or just vote for somebody else. I don't know. Vote for the ghost of Colin Powell. That pushes Trump back to 269. And then guess what? There's no clear winner in the electoral college, especially if Kamala somehow wins the popular vote, which will probably happen. So then you'll have Kamala, the argument would be from the left-wing media that, well, nobody has a majority in electoral college, and she won the popular vote. So depending upon how the Senate vote, because I think in that election it's the Senate. Trying to remember how that vote goes. I think it's. I gotta look it up, but I know it's each state gets a vote, and it'll take 26 out of the 50. I gotta look that up again. It's either 26 out of the 50 states, or the senators represent one. I gotta look at that vote again. I gotta look at how that process goes. I forget off the top of my head how it goes, but basically, if the Democrats have an advantage, I think it's in the Senate, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look that up right quick. Let me look that up. If no one gets to 270. If no one receives a majority electoral votes, the presidential election leaves the electoral college process and moves to Congress. The House of Representatives select the president from the 3 presidential candidates who received the most electoral votes. Each state delegation has 1 vote. That's right. I remember it was individual states. Each state delegation has 1 vote, and it's up to the individual states to determine how to vote. Since the District of Columbia is not a state, it has no state delegation in the House and cannot vote. A candidate receiving at least 26 votes, a majority of the states, is to be elected. That's what I remember. I thought it was something like that. Yeah, so there will be a delegation. Each state will get a vote, and whoever gets 26 votes wins. But I would think if the majority of these delegates or the majority of these delegations are Democrats, then that favors Harris. That's going to piss off Trump supporters. Severely piss them off. So I think it's very important that whoever wins this election wins it outright. No room for guesswork. None of that. Because if there's any sense at all that this election is stolen or whatever, look, I remember the election of 2000. A lot of Democrats were pissed off at that election, and I don't blame them. Okay? At the end of the day, this is something that could happen. There is the possibility of electoral tie or nobody gets a majority. It can happen. It's not probable, but it's possible. And we have had a lot of faithless electors. Now, I know the Supreme Court ruled back in 2020 that electors are supposed to be bound by law to vote the will of the state, but we still have faithless electors. In 2016, if I'm not mistaken, there were 2 faithless Trump electors in Texas. So Trump, instead of getting 360, had 304. And there were 5 electors who refused to vote for Hillary Clinton. One of them voted for Colin Powell. And then one of them vote for, like, what the hell was it? I think it was in Washington State. Washington had, 11 or 12 electoral votes, and Hillary only got 8 of them because, let me see. Yeah, one of the electors voted for Faith Spotted Eagle, who is an activist. They voted for her. One of them voted for Colin Powell. No, 3 of them voted for Colin Powell. Excuse me. So he wasn't even running for anything. So, that can happen. That's a distinct possibility. I know the Supreme Court ruled they're not supposed to do that, but who's to say it can't happen? So anyway, just wanted to put that out there. This is just something that could possibly happen in a scenario. Like a scenario could happen where Kamala Harris gets narrowly elected and the Republicans can pull the same bullshit. You know what I'm saying? A Republican leaning elector who doesn't like Harris may choose to not vote for her, send the election to the House of Representatives, and who knows what can happen. So these are the things that could happen. So anyway, just tell me what you guys think.